Deloitte has just produced, just published a sustainability program, is it, or development? What's the best thing to call it? Well, a survey. Okay, well, explain that to me.
Yeah, part of it was to update our 2009 survey with the companies, local companies. So we interviewed 108 companies in Brazil that actually represent 7% of Brazilian GDP. And our main objective was to understand what sustainable practices these companies are implementing and how many the companies that don't have sustainability practices right now, if they intend to do so in the near future. We saw quite a significant increase in these numbers. And the second objective was to understand what companies expect from the Rio+20 meetings, conference that is happening right now in Rio. So the survey was conducted in May, this past May, and it's quite interesting to see the changes in the practice and also what companies expect. You can see that half of the people interviewed, they expect big changes from the Rio+20, but the other half is like absolutely skeptical about it and don't think that anything practical is going to come out of it.
Why do you think that skepticism? Do you think it's because they simply don't have faith in politicians, they don't have faith in business? Was there any clear message that evolved from the survey?
There was. Most of the companies, they feel that there are not enough metrics and the goals are not clearly defined, and there's no legal sanction for the companies that don't comply. And so the lack of practical actions coming out of these companies. Sometimes there are a lot of discussions, but right now, clearly, we only think that the objectives, the main sustainable objectives, are going to come out of these meetings, but not exactly the goals and metrics that companies can use in the real day-to-day lives.
I mean, were the companies expecting answers to come out of the Rio+20 summit, or were they well aware of their own responsibilities in working towards sustainable development?
I think the reason most companies want clear goals is because they want to be competitive. So they want clear goals, clear rules, so that if they have to do something, their competitor has to do something as well. I would say that they are expecting a lot from the meeting.
I mean, skeptical or not, were all the companies or most of the companies you surveyed aware of the need for sustainable development to go greener? Was there a general raising of consciousness, I mean, compared to previous surveys that you've done? Is that consciousness there?
Yeah. In this last survey, 84% of the companies have sustainability practices already implemented. So that's a large number, and 12% intend to do so in the near future. And from these 12%, most are like smaller companies. So all the major companies, they already have sustainability practices in place, which means that they are conscious about the importance of sustainability.
Brazil is a fast-developing economy, often touted as one of the fastest-growing economies. We've seen huge advances in recent years. Do companies in general see implementing green policies as any kind of break, as any kind of obstacle in their development, or do they see it as part of, an intrinsic part of that growth?
Well, I'll say that most of the actions are going towards a social responsibility. And a lot of these actions are done through foundations right now. So if you actually see the results of the research, you see a decrease in terms of investment in sustainability by the companies, but that's majorly because they've got the larger companies, they have foundations that do this type of work. So they are investing heavily in social responsibility, which is something that we really need in Brazil right now.
And how does Brazil compare with other countries? You talked about representation in, was it 140 countries, 145
yes.
countries, 175,000 workers.
Yes.
I mean, presumably there are different rates of development on this issue around the world. How do you go about, or is there a way of trying to bring everybody more or less along the same lines?
Yeah, well, we have very good rules in Brazil, so it's not lack of legislation. There's a lot of bureaucracy that sometimes keep people away from the theme. But I think we are far ahead in terms of legislation and in terms of conscious. I would say we are not as developed as the UK or Europe.
But going in the right direction.